They say blood is thicker than water, but I learned the hard way that sometimes blood is exactly what cuts the deepest. This is the story of how Thanksgiving dinner turned into the worst moment of my life. When my younger sister stood up in front of my entire family and announced she was carrying my husband's child. My name is Amanda. I'm 43 years old, and this happened 2 years ago. What I'm about to share will sound like something from a soap opera, but I promise you every word is true. I grew up in a family of four. My parents, David and Margaret, were hardworking middle-class people who owned a small accounting firm. I had one younger sister, Kelsey, who was 5 years younger than me. Growing up, we were close in the way sisters often are, but there was always an undercurrent of competition. I was the responsible older sister, the one who got good grades and followed the rules. Kelsey was the wild child, the one who pushed boundaries and got away with things because she was the baby of the family. I don't want to paint Kelsey as a villain from childhood. She wasn't. She was fun and spontaneous and charming. People were drawn to her energy. But there was always this sense that she wanted what I had. If I got a bike, she needed a better one. If I made the honor roll, she had to be in the school play where everyone could see her. It was exhausting sometimes, but I loved her. She was my sister. I met my husband, Brian, when I was 28. He was 30, working as a commercial real estate agent, handsome in that approachable way that makes people trust him instantly. We dated for 2 years before he proposed. The wedding was beautiful, exactly what I'd always dreamed of. Kelsey was my maid of honor. She gave a toast that made everyone laugh and cry. I remember looking at her that day and thinking how lucky I was to have a sister who loved me so much. Brian and I built a good life together. We bought a house in the suburbs. I worked as a pediatric nurse. He climbed the ladder at his real estate firm. We tried for kids, but struggled with infertility for years. 3 rounds of IVF, all failures. It was the hardest thing we'd ever been through as a couple, but we survived it together. Eventually, we decided to stop trying and focus on being the best aunt and uncle we could be to our future nieces and nephews. We made peace with it, or at least we tried to. Kelsey, meanwhile, lived a completely different life. She moved to New York City after college to pursue acting. She worked as a waitress and went to auditions and dated a string of men who were all wrong for her in obvious ways. She'd come home for holidays with stories about her adventures, her near misses with fame, her chaotic love life. My parents worried about her constantly. I did too, but I also envied her freedom sometimes. She lived without fear, without the weight of responsibility I always felt. When Kelsey was 33, about 5 years ago, she moved back home. She'd finally admitted that the acting dream wasn't going to happen, and she was tired of barely scraping by in New York. She moved into my parents' basement temporarily while she figured out her next steps. Temporarily turned into months, then a year, then longer. My parents didn't push her to leave. I never could say no to Kelsey. Brian and I tried to help her get back on her feet. We'd have her over for dinner once a week. Brian helped her update her resume and connected her with people in his network. I helped her look for apartments she could afford. We were trying to be supportive. We were trying to be family. Looking back now, I can see the signs I missed. The way Kelsey would laugh just a little too hard at Brian's jokes. The way she'd text him directly instead of going through me when she had a question. The way she dressed when she knew we were getting together. Always a little more effort than necessary for a casual family dinner. But I didn't see it. Or maybe I didn't want to see it. Because seeing it would mean acknowledging that my sister and my husband were capable of something so devastating, I couldn't even let myself imagine it. About 18 months ago, I started noticing Brian was different. He'd work late more often. He'd be on his phone constantly, smiling at messages and then quickly closing the screen when I walked by. He'd pick fights over nothing, small arguments that felt like he was manufacturing reasons to be angry with me. Our sex life, which had never recovered completely after the IVF failures, disappeared entirely. I asked him multiple times if something was wrong. Was it work? Was it us? Was he unhappy? He always had an excuse. Work was stressful. He was tired. He was dealing with a difficult client. I'm fine. Stop worrying. Everything's fine. But everything wasn't fine. I could feel it in my bones. That instinct that tells you your world is shifting beneath your feet, even if you can't see the cracks yet. Around the same time, Kelsey started being harder to reach. She'd cancel our weekly dinners last minute. She'd avoid family gatherings. When she did show up, she seemed nervous, jumpy, like she was hiding something. My mother noticed too and asked me if Kelsey seemed okay. I told her I'd check on her, but when I tried, Kelsey brushed me off. She was fine, just busy. Just stressed about job hunting. Everything was fine, that phrase. Everything's fine. The biggest lie people tell when everything is falling apart. Last year, my mother insisted on hosting Thanksgiving at her house. She wanted the whole family together, the traditional dinner she'd been making for 40 years. My father's health had been declining, and I think she wanted one more normal holiday, one more memory of all of us around the table together. I agreed, of course. Brian seemed less enthusiastic, but said he'd be there. Kelsey also agreed, though she sounded strange on the phone when my mother called her. Distant, distracted. Thanksgiving Day arrived. Brian and I drove to my parents' house together in silence. He'd been especially cold to me that morning, snapping at me when I asked if he wanted coffee, acting like my presence was an irritation. I told myself it was just stress. The holidays are hard for everyone. We arrived around 2 in the afternoon. My parents' house smelled like turkey and stuffing and all the scents that are supposed to mean home and safety and family. My father was in his recliner watching football. My mother was in the kitchen, apron on, orchestrating the meal with military precision. Kelsey wasn't there yet. She arrived 20 minutes later. I heard her car pull up and went to the door to greet her. When she walked in, I immediately noticed she looked different. She'd gained weight, her face was fuller, and she was wearing a loose sweater that hung oddly on her frame. But it was her expression that struck me most. She looked terrified. "Hey," I said, hugging her. "You okay?" "You seem off." "I'm fine," she said, that phrase again. "Just tired." We gathered in the dining room. My mother had set the table beautifully, the good china and cloth napkins and candles. We all took our seats. My father at the head of the table, my mother to his right, me next to her, Brian beside me, and Kelsey across from us. It should have been perfect. It should have been a nice, normal family Thanksgiving. My mother said grace. We started passing dishes around. Small talk about the food, about my father's doctor appointments, about the weather. Surface level conversation that felt safe and meaningless. And then, halfway through the meal, Kelsey put down her fork. Her hands were shaking. She looked at me, then at Brian, then back at me. "I need to tell you all something," she said. Her voice was barely above a whisper. My mother looked up, concerned. "Kelsey, honey, what's wrong?" Kelsey stood up. She was crying now, tears streaming down her face, but she wasn't sobbing. She was eerily calm, like she'd rehearsed this moment 1,000 times in her head. "I'm pregnant," she said. My mother gasped. My father looked confused. I felt a jolt of surprise mixed with happiness. Despite everything, my first instinct was joy for my sister. Finally something good in her life. "That's wonderful, sweetheart," my mother started to say. "It's Brian's," Kelsey interrupted. The world stopped. Actually stopped. I could hear the clock ticking on the wall. could hear my father's labored breathing, could hear my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. But everything else was silent, frozen. I looked at Brian. His face had gone completely white. He wasn't looking at Kelsey. He was looking at his plate, jaw clenched, hands gripping his napkin so hard his knuckles were white. "What?" I whispered. The word came out broken, barely a sound. "I'm so sorry, Amanda. I'm so sorry. Brian and I, we've been seeing each other for over a year, and I'm pregnant. I'm 12 weeks pregnant, and the baby is his." My mother made a sound I'd never heard before, something between a scream and a sob. My father just stared, unable to process what he was hearing. I looked at Brian. "Tell me she's lying. Tell me this is some kind of sick joke." He finally looked up at me, and I saw it in his eyes before he even spoke. Guilt, shame, but also something else. Resignation. Like he'd been waiting for this moment, dreading it, but also relieved it was finally here. "Amanda, tell me she's lying," I screamed. "I can't," he said quietly. "Because she's not." I stood up so fast my chair fell backward with a crash. I couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. The room was spinning. "How long?" I demanded. Kelsey spoke up. 14 months. It started 14 months ago. 14 months. Over a year. While I was sleeping in the same bed with him. While I was helping her find a job. Inviting her into our home. Treating her like the sister I loved. While I was worrying about her. Checking on her. Trying to support her. She was sleeping with my husband. Carrying his child. Hey, I need to pause here for a second. If you're watching this story unfold and you're from somewhere in the world, drop a comment below and let me know where you're tuning in from. These stories are hard to tell, but knowing there are people out there listening makes it easier. And if you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button. There are more stories coming, and I'd love to have you along for this journey. Your support means everything. My mother was crying openly now. My father had his head in his hands. Brian sat there looking at his plate like a coward. And Kelsey just stood there, tears running down her face, but also something else in her expression. Defiance, maybe? Or relief that the secret was finally out. "Get out," I said to Brian. My voice was eerily calm. "Get out of this house right now. Amanda, please, we need to talk. Get out." He stood up slowly. Looked at Kelsey, some unspoken communication passing between them that made me want to vomit. Then he walked out. I heard the front door open and close, his car start. "Drive away." I turned to Kelsey. "How could you? How could you do this to me?" "I didn't mean for it to happen," she said, which is what people always say when they absolutely meant for it to happen. We connected. We fell in love. I know that doesn't make it okay. I know it's horrible, but you fell in love." I laughed, but it sounded manic even to my own ears. "You fell in love with my husband?" "My husband, Kelsey. The man I've been married to for 13 years. The man I went through infertility with. The man who was supposed to be my partner for life, and you fell in love with him?" "I'm sorry," she sobbed. "I'm so sorry." "I never wanted to hurt you." "Then why did you? Why did you tell me like this in front of everyone on Thanksgiving? Why now?" She put her hand on her stomach, a protective gesture that made my blood boil. "Because I'm keeping the baby, and Brian wants to be involved. We couldn't keep lying anymore. We couldn't keep sneaking around. It wasn't fair to anyone. Wasn't fair. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Wasn't fair to who? To you? To Brian? You're worried about what's fair?" My mother finally found her voice. "Kelsey, get out of my house." Kelsey looked at her mother in shock. "Mom," I said, "get out. I can't even look at you right now. What you've done, both of you, it's unforgivable." "Mom, please, I'm your daughter. So is Amanda." My mother screamed. And you destroyed her life. You destroyed this family. Get out. Kelsey grabbed her purse and ran out, still crying. I heard her car peel out of the driveway. And then it was just me and my parents, standing in the dining room with a half-eaten Thanksgiving meal on the table, and our family shattered into pieces around us. I don't remember much of the rest of that day. I know I stayed at my parents' house. I know my mother held me while I cried. I know my father kept saying he was going to kill Brian, which would have been touching if it wasn't so impotent. My father could barely walk across the room without getting winded. But the rage in his voice was real. I went home the next day to an empty house. Brian had taken some of his things and left. He'd sent me a text. I'm staying at a hotel. We need to talk when you're ready. I'm so sorry. I wasn't ready to talk. I didn't know if I'd ever be ready to talk. The next few days were a blur of phone calls. Brian called repeatedly. I didn't answer. Kelsey called. I didn't answer. My mother called to check on me. I barely answered. My friends called after my mother told them what happened. I couldn't face them. I took a week off work. I barely left my bedroom. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. I'd lie in the bed I'd shared with Brian and replay every moment of the last year, looking for clues I'd missed. Every late night at work, every business trip, every time he'd pulled away when I tried to touch him. It had all been leading to this. Brian finally showed up at the house unannounced. I heard his key in the lock and came downstairs to find him standing in the living room, looking smaller than I'd ever seen him. We need to talk, he said. There's nothing to talk about. I want a divorce. Amanda, please. Just let me explain. Explain what? How you've been sleeping with my sister for over a year. How you got her pregnant. How you both lied to my face every single day. What is there to explain, Brian? He ran his hands through his hair. It started by accident. She came over one night when you were working a double shift. We started talking and it just happened. And then it kept happening. I know it's no excuse. I know I'm a horrible person. But I love her, Amanda. I'm in love with her. Those words. I'm in love with her about my sister from my husband. They didn't even sound real. Get your things and get out, I said. I'll file for divorce next week. Don't contact me unless it's through a lawyer. What about the house? What about, I don't care, take whatever you want. I just want you gone. He left. Packed up more of his things over the next few days while I stayed at my parents' house. I couldn't be in that house, couldn't sleep in that bed, couldn't look at the photos on the walls of our life together. All of it felt like a lie now. I filed for divorce 2 weeks after Thanksgiving. Brian didn't contest it. We'd been married 13 years, which meant we had to split assets. The house, the savings, the retirement accounts. All of it got divided down the middle. I thought losing half of everything would hurt, but honestly, I barely cared. You can't care about money when your entire life has been incinerated. Kelsey tried to reach out multiple times. Texts, calls, even a letter she left at my parents' house. I never responded. My mother didn't speak to her either. My father refused to even say her name. She'd chosen Brian over her family, and we chose to cut her out of our lives. About 4 months after Thanksgiving, my mother told me Kelsey had given birth to a baby girl. Brian was at the hospital. They were playing Happy Family. I felt physically sick when I heard it. Not just because of the betrayal, but because I'd spent years trying to get pregnant and failed. And my sister had gotten pregnant by my husband on what was probably the first try. The universe has a cruel sense of humor sometimes. If you're still with me, thank you. I know this is heavy, but these are the stories that need to be told. If this story resonates with you in any way, please leave a like on this video. It helps more people find these stories. And maybe someone out there is going through something similar and needs to know they're not alone. Your support really does make a difference. The divorce was finalized 6 months after that Thanksgiving. I got the house, half the savings, and my dignity back. Brian got his freedom and a new family with my sister. I heard through mutual friends that they'd moved in together, that they were playing house with the baby, that Brian was posting photos on social media like nothing had happened. Like he hadn't destroyed a 13-year marriage and a family in the process. I went to therapy, a lot of therapy. I needed help processing the double betrayal, the loss of both my husband and my sister in one devastating blow. My therapist helped me understand that their actions weren't about me. They were about their own brokenness, their own selfishness, their own inability to do the right thing, even when it would have cost them nothing to just walk away from each other. But understanding that intellectually didn't make it hurt less. I'd lost my husband, my sister, and my dream of having children all at once. The life I'd been building for 13 years was gone. I had to start over from scratch at 41 years old. My father passed away about a year after the Thanksgiving disaster. His health had been declining, but I think what happened with Kelsey and Brian broke something in him. He died without ever speaking to Kelsey again. She didn't come to the funeral. Brian didn't come either. My mother and I buried him together, just the two of us and a few close friends. At the funeral, I finally let myself grieve everything. Not just my father, but the family I thought I had. The sister I thought I knew. The marriage I thought was solid. All of it was gone, buried alongside my father. But here's the thing about hitting rock bottom. Eventually, you realize you're standing on solid ground, and you can start building again. I threw myself into work. I picked up extra shifts at the hospital. I volunteered with a local literacy program. I started going to yoga classes. I adopted a dog, a rescue mutt named Charlie, who became my constant companion. Slowly, painfully, I started building a new life. Not the life I'd planned, but a life nonetheless. I started dating again about 18 months after the divorce. Nothing serious at first, just testing the waters, remembering what it felt like to be valued by someone. I met a man named Tom through a friend. He's a high school teacher, divorced himself, kind and patient, and nothing like Brian. We've been together for 6 months now. It's not perfect, and I'm still gun-shy about trust, but it's good. It's real. It's built on honesty instead of lies. My mother eventually reached out to Kelsey, not because she forgave her, but because she wanted to know her granddaughter. It's complicated and messy, but they have some kind of relationship now. My mother sends me photos sometimes of the little girl, my niece. She looks like Kelsey. I delete the photos immediately. I'm not there yet. I don't know if I'll ever be there. I haven't spoken to Kelsey or Brian since that Thanksgiving. I have no idea if they're still together, if they're happy, if they regret what they did. I've blocked them both on everything. I don't want to know. Their lives are no longer my concern. People ask me sometimes if I've forgiven them. The answer is complicated. Have I forgiven them in the sense that I no longer actively hate them every day? Yes. Have I forgiven them in the sense that I'd welcome them back into my life? Absolutely not. Forgiveness doesn't mean reconciliation. It means releasing the poison so it doesn't keep destroying you from the inside out. I've learned a lot about myself in the past 2 years. I've learned that I'm stronger than I thought. I survived something that should have destroyed me, and I came out the other side still standing. I've learned that family isn't always blood. The people who stood by me, my mother, my friends, my coworkers who covered my shifts when I couldn't function, those are my real family. I've learned that betrayal changes you. I'm not the same person I was before that Thanksgiving. I'm more cautious now, slower to trust, quicker to protect myself. Some people would call that damage. I call it wisdom. And I've learned that you can lose everything you thought defined you and still find a way to be okay. I lost my husband, my sister, my fertility, my father, my sense of family, but I didn't lose myself. I'm still here. Different, but here. The hardest part, even now, is the holidays. Thanksgiving, especially. I haven't celebrated it since that day. I usually volunteer at a soup kitchen instead, serving meals to people who have nowhere else to go. It feels more honest than sitting around a table pretending to be grateful when all I can think about is what happened 2 years ago. But this year might be different. Tom asked if I wanted to have a quiet Thanksgiving with him and his daughter from his previous marriage. Just the three of us, nothing fancy, no pressure. I said I'd think about it. Maybe it's time to reclaim that day, to make new memories that aren't tainted by the old ones. My therapist says I'm doing well, that I've processed the trauma in healthy ways, that I'm moving forward instead of staying stuck. I suppose that's true. But I also know that some wounds never fully heal. They just become part of who you are, scars you carry that remind you of what you survived. I think about the woman I was 2 years ago, sitting at that Thanksgiving table, completely unaware that in 5 minutes her entire world would implode. Part of me wishes I could warn her, prepare her somehow. But another part of me knows that even if I could, she wouldn't believe me. Because the betrayal was so complete, so unthinkable, that no amount of warning could have made it easier to hear. Before we wrap up, I want to ask one more thing. If this story moved you, if you've experienced betrayal yourself or know someone who has, please share this video. Leave a comment with your own story if you feel comfortable. Let's build a community where we can talk about these painful truths without shame. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please do. These stories matter, and your support helps me keep sharing them. We're building something important here. Sometimes people ask me if I blame myself for what happened. Did I drive Brian away? Was I not attentive enough, not attractive enough, not enough of something? And the answer is no. I wasn't perfect. No one is, but I didn't deserve what they did to me. I was faithful. I was committed. I showed up every single day for 13 years. If Brian was unhappy, he could have told me. He could have asked for counseling. He could have filed for divorce before starting something with someone else. And definitely before starting something with my sister. Kelsey's betrayal cuts even deeper in some ways. Brian was my husband, but Kelsey was my blood. We shared a childhood, parents, a history. She knew exactly how much this would hurt me, and she did it anyway. That's the part one struggle with most. Not that it happened, but that she knew it would destroy me, and she did it anyway. That kind of selfishness, I don't know if I can ever understand it, but I don't have to understand it. I just have to keep moving forward, keep building my new life, keep choosing joy when I can find it, keep trusting that someday this won't hurt quite so much. I went back to that house we shared, the one I kept in the divorce. It took me a year before I could sleep there again. I repainted every room, replaced the furniture, changed the locks, made it mine instead of ours. It's not the same house anymore. It's better. It's a home I built for myself without lies hiding in the walls. I still see traces of them sometimes in town. Brian's car in a parking lot, someone who looks like Kelsey from behind. It makes my stomach drop every time, but the panic fades faster now. I can breathe through it. I can remind myself that I survived the worst thing I could imagine, and I'm okay. Not perfect, not healed completely, but okay. My niece, the baby that came from this nightmare, she's almost 2 years old now. I've never met her. I don't know if I ever will. Part of me feels guilty about that. She's innocent in all of this. She didn't ask to be born into this mess. But I can't separate her from how she came to exist. Maybe someday I'll be strong enough to meet her, to be some version of an aunt to her, but not now, not yet. The truth is, betrayal like this doesn't have a clean resolution. There's no moment where everything suddenly makes sense or stops hurting. You just learn to carry it differently. Some days it's a boulder on your back. Some days it's a pebble in your shoe. And some days, if you're lucky, you forget it's there at all. I'm grateful for the life I'm building now. It's quieter than my old life, smaller, but it's real. Every person in it has earned their place through loyalty and love and showing up when things got hard. There's no room anymore for people who only show up when it's convenient. Tom told me the other day that he admires my strength. I didn't know how to respond to that because I don't feel strong most days. I feel tired and scarred and cautious. But maybe that's what strength looks like after betrayal. Not bouncing back like nothing happened, but learning to stand upright even when you're carrying the weight of what was done to you. I don't know what the future holds. I don't know if Tom and I will last. I don't know if I'll ever fully trust anyone again. I don't know if I'll ever reconcile with Kelsey or if I'd even want to. But I know I'm not the same woman I was 2 years ago at that Thanksgiving table. That woman was naive, trusting, maybe a little blind to the darkness people are capable of. The woman I am now knows better. She's been through fire and came out scarred but standing. She knows her worth doesn't depend on whether other people value her. She knows that betrayal says everything about the betrayer and nothing about the betrayed. And most importantly, she knows that even when the people you love most in the world destroy you, you can still find a way to keep living, to keep loving, to keep hoping for better. That's not the ending I would have chosen for my story, but it's the ending I got. And I'm making peace with it, one day at a time. Thank you for listening to my story, for being here, for letting me share something so painful and so personal. If you take one thing away from this, let it be this. You are not defined by what others do to you. You are defined by how you survive it. And survival, real survival, isn't about going back to who you were before. It's about becoming someone new, someone stronger, someone who knows their own worth and refuses to settle for anything less. You are enough. You always were. And anyone who can't see that doesn't deserve a place in your life.